ton of time. All right. So one of the biggest things I think to be like a really, really effective like person like within sports science is to have the ability to have like a coach's eye. So, you know, there's a lot of different subdisciplines in sports performance, sports psychology, strength conditioning, athletic training, sports science. But I think when we get in our silo and we think too much like one area, we kind of lose the touch with the kids. So one of the things that we want to always do is be able to have really good contact and connection with the people that we're talking to, student athletes, coaches, whatever it may be. So oftentimes we follow what's called a constraints-led approach, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And it comes from education. It comes from like teaching, skill development, and more importantly, just learning. So when we think about learners, it could be, you know, like in English or math or whatever, we're developing skills. We do not develop linearly. It's not just like, okay, day 1, day 2, day 3. It doesn't go like that. It's messy. It's all over the place. So us as coaches, us as people in sport, people in sports medicine, people in rehabilitation, if we keep that in mind and we follow a systems-based approach, and I'll talk about that in another day, it can help us just plot out the pathway, okay? So the first thing on the sheet that we want to really talk about is the idea of ecosystems. Think about like a pond. Okay, so you got like this pond, and we have, it can be, y'all ever been to Collier Lake? So there's like a little lake, it's essentially just like a big pond, and it's like 15 minutes from here. Check it out, it's really cool, trails around it. Okay, so we have a pond. What else is around a pond? Huh? Nice. What else?
Ducks.
Ducks?
Nice.
Solid.
It has like little insects that fly around.
Okay. They're probably following the duck,
Bugs.
right? And then let's put a lily pad. And what's on a lily pad? A frog. What else?
Grass.
Grass
Moss.
coming up here. Okay.
Sometimes it has flowers.
Flowers are pretty. Got sunshine.
Yes.
What else?
Rocks.
Rocks, okay.
Fish.
Ooh,
I was gonna say, I feel like that's the most obvious one, but none of us ever.
let's make 2. We better make 2. Okay, so check it out. When we have an ecosystem, it doesn't matter what it is, there's a mix of inorganic things, like rocks, and organic things, right? Okay, so the fish lives in something that's inorganic, water, okay? The frog sits on another organic thing. Both are organic, they're interacting with the inorganic thing, but there's a lot of interactions back and forth. Okay, so that is sport. That is essentially everything that we do within learning. So let's take a football field, for example. Okay, on the football field, we have the turf, the field, whatever it may be. We have lights, okay? We have wind. Maybe we have sunshine, okay? We have athletes. We have coaches. We have sports scientists. We have athletic trainers. We have everything. What we have is interactions. So when we think about sport and we think about development, more importantly, we want to think about these interactions because they're very, you know, two-way, if you will. It doesn't go like very linear. Like in this setting, I like to call it like 1 + 1 does not equal 2. Okay, so like in a linear system, if I put 1 fish in and I add another fish, I have 2 fish. But what if I add a fish and then shark eats this fish, now I have 0, I add 1, I have 1. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
What happens if some weird evolutionary things happen and one of them clones itself, now I have 3 fish from 2. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
That's what happens in athlete development. So I don't want you to think about anything like very cleanly. I want you to think about like there's a lot of different things going on through all this. That's where on this sheet where I have the next bullet point, the 3 different constraints, that's our ecosystem within sport, okay? So follow me here. So we talked about the ecosystem, we talked about the pond, we put a bunch of animals up there, okay? So now we have our field, we have our athletes, we have all the different interacting people, but we don't wanna just think about, I don't wanna, as a sports scientist who's evaluating things, I don't wanna measure the athletic trainer, the coach, the athlete, anything like that, it's just too much. So we wanna make our ecosystem, like I have on your sheet there, essentially a triangle. We have the athlete, we have the task, and we have the environment. Okay, this is our ecosystem. And every single day that we're out at practice, out at training, today, when you're out there, I want you to think about it through this lens. Think about this framework of I'm evaluating, and today we're gonna use technology. I'm gonna show you how that embeds in this here in a second. But when you're out there, you come to a practice, you go into a weight room, don't just kind of be casually watching, okay? We wanna be looking at one of 3 things: task, environment, or the environment, or the athlete or the environment. More importantly, like I talked about, how they engage with one another. Okay? Now, later on, we're gonna talk even more about how we can manipulate these. We won't really be designing training plans. A lot of times the coaches do that, right? But as a coach, remember, like learning is not pretty like that. I can't just continue to stack things and expect it to continue to grow, but I do need to adjust things for learning to happen. So basically, when I'm designing a training plan over the course of time, let's say 6 weeks, a summer, a semester, a career, I can change or alter these 3 things. So if I'm a coach, I can change the task. Let's take softball for an example, starting off. So let's say I'm working with a second baseman. The first task, maybe I'm just gonna roll the ball nice and soft on the dirt, okay? And it's straight up. They're gonna field it between their body right here. They're gonna come up and they're gonna throw it back to the coach. Next ball, it's right there, nice and easy. How do I change that task to change that drill?
And backhand.
Okay, so now I'm gonna roll it over here. I'm gonna force them to backhand. What else can I do to change that task?
Make them throw it somewhere else.
Okay, maybe the task is I'm gonna backhand and then I'm gonna throw it this way. See how we're changing that environment now? Or not the environment, but the ecosystem to influence this. So the first thing I can change is the task, okay? The next one, the athlete. How can I change the athlete? Let's take foul shooting. Okay, I come up here, I'm gonna shoot a shot, boom, boom, boom. I'm still working on foul shooting. How do I change the athlete to change that ecosystem of that drill?
Their position, like
Okay.
their form type thing.
Okay. So talk to me, how would that be? To change position or form?
So like for example, if they're doing the same thing over and over and it's just not working, or it's inconsistent, like it'll work one time but not work the second time, you can like look at their form and look at what they're doing, like what they would do the first time that makes it happen and what they do the second time that where it doesn't happen, and then give them constructive criticism, like okay, now this is working and this is not, so change it to this so
Yeah.
it can work.
Yeah, I can see that. So let's say I'm an athlete, what you're saying, I have this technique, boom, and it's just not working. So maybe I flip feet.
Yeah.
Widen. I change the athlete's setup or execution. Okay, I can see that. I like that a lot. Okay. How else can I influence the athlete?
we know that, but knowing when to kind of tune out what else is going on. Cause like during those times, like you have all the people like, oh, I'm missing, making a whole lot of noise, but you have to be able to zone in and stay in the right headspace so that you can do what you have to do.
So teaching them some of the mental side of things to be able to come in and out. Maybe there is time that I can like check out and listen to all the noise, but then when I'm about to shoot the foul shot, maybe that's when the dribbles occur. That's when I close off, and now all I'm thinking about is hit the bucket. Okay. What about within a single drill? I have a kid and he's just nailing every shot. Every shot, swish, swish. What about changing the athlete's readiness level? Hey, we hit 5 shots, you went 5 for 5, we're gonna run up the stadium. Back, now get back on the line. Now they're tired, they're stressed out, so you can tax them or change the readiness. But you guys get the point, right? You can influence the athlete, but even keeping the drill the same, the task the same, now the ecosystem is different. Okay, the last one is the environment. This is one of my favorites. It's actually somewhat easy to conceptualize. So let's take a different drill, or a sport. Let's take a soccer kicker taking a penalty kick. Or is it penalty kick or is it a, what is it? Is it penalty kick?
I think so.
PK, yeah,
Sounds right to
PK.
me.
Yeah, penalty kick at the end of the game or something like that. Okay, so now we have penalty kick. We know it's X amount of distance away from the goal. It's one-on-one, goalkeeper versus shot taker. Athlete, got a shot of water, calm down. The crowd's going nuts, so they're really fired up, but they're in a good headspace, they're ready to go. How can we change the environment?
Well, you don't really have control over the weather, but having them practice when you know like the weather, like they can't always practice in like sunshine because on game day it's not guaranteed that it's going to be sunny.
1,000%, 1,000%. And I think you just said it, was you can't control the weather on game day. So you have to be able to prepare yourself in a lot of different areas. If I'm playing softball, I need to be able to handle 28 degrees and slight rain because that may happen, okay? So weather, changing the weather. What about just like, I'm getting ready for a football game and it's gonna rain Saturday, but there's no rain coming up. What if you just dunk the balls in water? So you simulated changing the weather to cause them to change the environment. Now they have to execute the task. What else?
I think like you can't really control like where the other team sets up when you're like the whole penalty kick. I think like a line of people stands in front, so like being able to prepare for like everything that they might do.
Yeah. So kind of like your opponent set up, your opponent scheme.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Another big one could be field surface. So the field surface is significantly different if it's hardwood wood versus concrete with it, whether it's grass versus turf. A bunch of different types of turf. What about indoor outdoor?
Yeah, that's tough.
Lights, time of day. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, I mean, this is a field of study. Like this whole thing, this is one of my favorite fields of study, but this in itself, like nonlinear pedagogy, how athletes, and not just athletes, how children learn, like this is its own area of study. But we can take this now, we've talked about how to design drills, and we can actually take it over into sports science for what we do, and that's essentially evaluation. Now I want you guys, everything that we do, we have all this cool technology. We have GPS, we have NordBoard, we have force plates, we have grip strength, we have everything, vision board. All it is an evaluation. Now, today, once we go outside, we're gonna be running Catapult. That's gonna give us information on a couple different things. Okay, but I want you guys and to help with that, and I want you to really dig in. You're gonna be with Flurry on the Catapult computer. He's gonna cut up practice and everything. You can see how to do that and how to operate it. But what I want you guys to do is to view training through these three things. And then on the back of this sheet here in a second, I'm gonna show you how to do that. You're gonna write notes on the task. What happened? What did you see? How could it be adjusted? How could it be progressed up? Was it too hard for anybody? Was it too easy for anybody? Okay, you're gonna look at the athletes. How did they handle it? Did they look ready? Did they look ready mentally, physically, emotionally? Were they engaging? Was there anybody that stood out? And then finally, we're gonna look at the environment. There's a slight chance of showers today, but if it's sunny and we're good, we're going right outside. We'll be on turf for the most part. I think there may be one drill on grass, but the majority of the time is on our turf field. Okay, so that is pretty standard, but just evaluating the environment. There's construction going on. So was it really loud? Could we hear instructions? But I want us to break it into these three areas. Flip on the back of this sheet, and I actually gave you a sheet to use today, but actually just go to the second sheet that I gave you because this is the one we'll use today. This is what I fill out every single day, and flip to the side that has the little red bar. There you go. So every single day I go to a practice, doesn't matter what sport it is, I fill this out. And basically what I'm trying to do is to evaluate with an ecological model, okay? So what I'll do every single day, sometime through the day, I take a reading of the weather. It could be on weatherchannel.com, it could be on the TV, it could be on my iPhone, whatever it is. And that's what you see right there on the environmental factors. What are the conditions? Okay, is it gonna rain? Are there thunderstorms around? Is it gonna be sunny? Is it the hottest day of the year? Those are some things you need to know. Toward the summer, it's good to know humidity, field surface, a lot of those different things. So I like to fill those in. We'll fill those in just kind of when we break here. For us, we always need to be ready to say something. Okay, so I need to have something ready. That's what you guys are building with like Performance Academy. So like at the beginning of a semester, we like to talk about sleep, or middle of the semester, maybe we're talking about substance abuse and drugs and alcohol. That goes in that little education setting, or that box right there. So now, from that point, I already have my notes ready. So if somebody calls on me, hey Nelly, do you have anything to say to the team? Absolutely, I've got my notes ready to go before I even get to practice. Then the bottom little section there, what I have is like anything I perceive, it's just a notes area. Sometimes I fill that up, sometimes I don't. Flip to the second page. Okay, so now on the second page up top are measurables, and I will adjust these dependent on the sport I'm working with. If I'm at baseball practice, it may be certain measurables that they're collecting. If this one is built for football, so those are some measurables that we'll have after we get done training based on catapult GPS, or just a stopwatch with like duration. But after practice, we come in, we download the data, I will essentially just fill those data in. So now what I have is if Coach Franklin or any coach calls me after practice, I don't have to open my computer quickly. I've already written it down, or more importantly, I've written it down so I know it. Does that make sense? So it's just allowing me to break it down holistically. The next section is essentially this. I will take a few minutes after practice and I write a couple notes about the athletes. How did they look? You know, did they make any comments? Did they look like they had eaten before? Did they not? You know, those notes go in there. The task. Did I think, hey, this drill was too hard? We needed a little bit more time in between periods. Maybe we should put a water break here, whatever. I'll put that in task. And then finally, the environment, I write that down. So today, what I want you guys to do is to, you're gonna focus on GPS. Like that's your learning experience today outside of this. But every time we go outside, we wanna get one of these, and I want you guys to just fill it out. You can keep it on your binder. It's not like an assignment that I'm gonna check, but, and I'll show you all of mine. For years I've been doing this. And you can just take this to create your own. And I would also charge you, if there's something you wanna add to it, I'll give you the Excel file and you can just change it however you like. So we'll start doing that today. But the biggest takeaway I want you to get today is this ecosystem for athletes. When we're working with athletes, when we're training, whatever, you can break it down and change it, design it, or you can evaluate it with this. Any questions with that model?
What is it important?
So that right there, for me, and again, that's exactly the one that I use. A lot of times things will come up in the middle of the day. Hey, Nelly, can you talk to so-and-so? I write that in important. If coach asks me anything, it goes in important. So then at the end of practice, when I come in, I see important, and it just is a flag for me. You know, it doesn't have to be. I used to have the weather there in the education section was a little bit bigger, but it's just kind of evolved to that. So then, we're not gonna dig into this today, but what you would do, let's say you had a staff. We are a staff of 3 right here, and we're coaching different positions, or we're a sports science crew, and we're working like we are this afternoon. In a perfect world, what you would do is everyone would have their notes, just like you guys have, and then we'd come off the field, and then we would debrief, and we would say, Brianna, comments on task. Okay, and you'd say, you know, I thought this and this, and somebody would be like, I agree, or no, I don't think, you're out of line, no, whatever. And then we come to a consensus on what we thought. Shelly, what were your perceptions on the athlete or the environment, or did you see anything else? That debrief allows groups to come together to come up with a consensus. We're not gonna do that today just because it's later in the day, after training today, but that's what we would typically do throughout a year or after practice. That's kind of what we do. Sound okay?
Mm-hmm.
Any questions at all?
I think so.
Awesome. All right, well, we can erase this and we can go on back to the place. What we'll try to do too is, like, we kind of talked about the little different divisions that we have in the department. So with John, he's gonna spend a lot of time with you guys showing you all the different tech and the tools that we use. Adam, he's gonna talk to you guys a lot about operations. Anna, she may grab you and do some different things about how we organize data. What I'm gonna work on is just like the big picture, how everything meshes together. If there's certain things that you're very interested in too, we can go in those routes, but that's kind of how we're gonna shape how we talk about certain things.
Cool.
Sound good?
Yep.
Awesome. We're good to go.